Oh yeah!
We're here today with the Film Festival Flix Mountain and Adventure Film Festival, the online panel discussion about adventure filmmaking. And I'm very excited today with the panel we have. We have Nasa Koski from the Adventure Film School, who's also a great director and editor. Fitz Cahall from Duct, Then Beer.
Yep.
And let me flip off my YouTube, otherwise we're going to hear everything twice. So we're here today with the Film Festival Flix Mountain. Okay. Next up, we've got Dana Romanoff from National Park Experience, who's also the co-director of Love in the Tetons, and her co-producer, co-partner, co-founder, Amy Marquis. So first off, can each of you tell us a little bit about how you got into making films in the great outdoors and a little bit about what you do? Let's start with Nasa.
Okay, well, let's see. I think I just started by telling my own stories from my own adventures. Started cutting little videos of my adventures for myself, for my friends, for my family, and then really enjoyed that process and got a lot of encouragement, and then realized I needed to educate myself if I wanted it to be a little bit more, watchable by more than just like, my mom and dad. So yeah, that's how I started. I just started learning from, I got some good mentors and started making my own films, trying to make it for a wider audience.
Great. Fitz, tell us all about, Duct Tape and Beer. It's got to be one of the best names for a company in the business.
Thanks. Yeah, I started out as a writer, really, and I've been, I started out covering political journalism, doing political journalism, and basically, I was in traditional media for a long time, and my options for having a career in that kept dwindling as they laid off people, and I just kind of got forced into a situation where it was like I got to do what I love, sort of by the fact that a lot of other roadblocks were blocked off to me or shut down to me, and ended up becoming just basically figuring out how to tell stories in any way possible. And for me, part of that was becoming a filmmaker. And so I do many different things, but I definitely direct and write films. So yeah.
Excellent. Dana, tell us about your journey.
Sure. Well, I guess my background is in anthropology and cultural studies, and that segued into, with a love for photography, and that segued into a career as a photojournalist, working for papers and magazines and freelance. So just telling stories about people and people around the world and having those adventures around the world. And that, as kind of similar to Fitz, as those avenues started to close with print media and traditional media, developed a little bit more into filmmaking and storytelling, wanting viewers to really feel what it's like to be in the shoes of the people that they're watching, and to be able for people to tell their own stories, and using, having the ability of film, which blends the visual image and the audio to tell that story, really seemed to be a good fit. And then the outdoor realm came into it really with NPX National Park Experience, when I teamed up with Amy, and it's really telling the stories of people, and that's what's at the core of it for me, but doing it in these majestic settings in national parks around the country.
Amy, tell us your journey.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a theme here, it seems. I too came from a print background. Sorry, guys, I'm fighting a cold today, so my just if I sound a little flaky. Uh, yeah, so I came from a print background. I was an editor on magazines for 15 years, and the last big chunk of that career was 9 years with the National Parks magazine. About 5 years before I left, I really started becoming drawn to film and multimedia as a way to tell the stories that we were telling in print. And I love music, so I loved the idea of being able to tell this really beautiful story to music. And I also really loved the interviews I was doing, and it was frustrating to me that I couldn't capture the intonation of somebody's voice in the print story. So Media Storm had just hit the scene around that time, so I really started paying attention to what they were doing. And then we decided as an editorial team that we wanted to start pushing some of these stories off the printed page, and just really studied what was going on out there, and saw some really great stuff and a lot of not so great stuff, so tried to glean our lessons from that. And then I had an opportunity to go to Yosemite, and I had directed films from my desk towards the end, but I got a chance to go to Yosemite for 6 weeks and make 2 short films on the ground, and I just totally fell in love with the process. Craziest, hardest thing I've ever done, but just loved it, and knew that it was time for me to jump off. So with the centennial of the National Park System coming up in 2016, I saw this opportunity to tell stories that you don't typically hear coming out of the national parks. And we're really just trying to focus on groups and characters that haven't traditionally been invited into the national park space or even the outdoor space in general, and just shine a light on the amazing transformations that are happening among those people through our NPX film series.
Well, that's great. So I think a lot of people, they adore these films. We're trying to solve and make it easier for them to see them and get inspired and go have some of these experiences. And along the way, some of these people will hopefully get inspired to want to make their own films. So the next question is how does somebody learn the genre? Do they go to film school? Do they just pick up a camera? Let's talk about, amongst you all, how do you think is the best way for people to get the skill set, get into this, and what's the most important part about selling a story in terms of the audience? Like, what's going to make it work?
I'm happy to chime in first
great.
on this one, because I feel I didn't go to film school, went to journalism school, but I feel like I kind of put myself through film school in a way. When we made the decision on the magazine that we wanted to start trying some digital storytelling, again, we started doing all this research. We were looking at what had been made, who was doing it well, how they were doing it well, what that budget looked like, what was their process, who made up their team, what was their distribution plan, all those questions. There's so many moving parts. And so through that, I started a blog called The Digital Naturalist, and really just I did Q&As with filmmakers, and I just dug down into like the nitty-gritty of what goes into good film, and it was fantastic. I feel like I was really truly able to kind of put myself through school, and of course, on the business side, Dana and I are learning so much more now. But I think I wish I could go to film school. I'm envious of people who have gone, and I wish I had that base. But I think there are definitely ways to break in and learn a ton just by looking at what's out there, finding the people whose work you really admire, and creating a relationship with them, learning how they do it so well.
Great. And Fitz, talk about, you've really developed a very unique system. I'd love to know how you got there, but in working with all the major brands and essentially getting them, I don't know for certain, but it seems like you're able to go to them with ideas, and they also bring things to you.
Yeah, it definitely works both ways. For me, it's it's like, having a career as a writer and then basically seeing that disappear in front of your eyes because you weren't making enough money. It kind of colored the way I approached. It kind of made me fearless in a way. I still experience fear in terms of my career. But I do just think it's you got to let that go. And I think that film school would be great if someone's interested in that. But I didn't have that. I just didn't have that luxury. Like I wasn't going to go hit reset and be 18 again at that stage. And so for me, it was just a matter of like the same way that everybody does this is like there's this thing called Google. You sit down, you start looking, you start finding, and there's so many incredible resources. And then, you know, I mean, for me, it's like my mentors have been less on the film side. You know, I definitely I'm not. I don't think I really am cocky, but maybe there was a little bit of cocky where I was like, I think I got the storytelling side of this down, and I'll figure it out. And I worked with people that were more experienced with me with the camera side, but I like felt like I would have a handle on the storytelling side. So I worked with a lot of other people. I knew what I was good at, and I sort of like just figured out how to fit myself into the process. The business side, I definitely like, you know, same sort of thing as you go seek mentors, you go figure out how to do it because it's like you don't want to reinvent the wheel. And there's certainly something there. So for me, in part, you know, there was like this reality of like, how's this going to work? And I just saw this opportunity before it was happening, or like as it was happening, was that I understood that I could go straight to a brand and I could say, hey, support this because this will matter to the community that you are part of. And that started working, and it just, you know, I mean, it didn't happen overnight. I mean, it happened pretty quickly, I think, like in retrospect, but it also didn't happen overnight, and it's still evolving now. I'm still learning how to sell and how to make stuff that works for a brand, and sometimes it's successful and sometimes it's not, and there's failures and there's successes, and you kind of you know, hope that working with the different companies, you know, you can get them to believe in projects that are going to work for both you as a creative, but also more importantly, work for the community.
I think that's great. There's a lot of avenues we're going to get over to NASA in just a moment, but that's one of the big pieces that I see happening today is the change from an adventurer who videos their adventure to filmmakers that are choosing the genre, or that collaboration between the two, like you had with The Road from Cahall, where Kyle went out and shot a bunch of footage, and then you were able to take that and create a legitimate story. So now you have the best of both worlds, that it's not just sports porn, which is great on YouTube, but rather it's something that can actually go beyond the boundaries of the current community and speak to other people and get them inspired. So kind of a very cool thing that you're doing, NASA. I'd love to talk about your background, and then now what you're doing with the Adventure Film School for people who want to do this.
Well, I came from a totally different career. I was a software engineer for about 15 years, and I was just looking for something different, something to combine my interest in technology and also in the, you know, the photography and film stuff that I was doing. And so I yeah, kind of took the leap to go towards filmmaking. Similar to, you know, Fitz, or I think anyone who comes out of who doesn't really, you know, start in film school or anything like that. Just learning through Google, learning through mentors. And one of the resources that was available actually was the Adventure Film School. It was started by Michael Brown, who's a filmmaker located in Boulder. And he, I learned a lot from him. I took 3 courses, and just to try to figure out if I really wanted to make the leap, and if it was something that I felt I had an aptitude for and that I could make a career out of. And through that process, what I tried to do, similarly, I didn't want to start from ground zero, was try to use my strengths to jump into the industry. And so, you know, used a lot of my tech skills that I had, focused a lot on relationships. I pretty much studied the industry. So, you know, all the people who are making films, I went to a lot of film festivals. And because I had watched a lot of films in this genre, when I met filmmakers, I tried to strike up conversation. I tried to build relationships. I tried to be consistent. And so when new filmmakers ask me, you know, how to get started, I often say that to focus on relationships and to focus on understanding the industry. And of course, focusing on the sport. Sometimes people come in, or, you know, if you want to be in sport, I guess. But yeah, they kind of are maybe a little uneducated on that. And so, you know, when they go to these film festivals, they just sort of go as a spectator and then they leave, and they don't really bridge that gap, I guess, to um, building relationships. But through the building of relationships, I became very close friends with Michael, and eventually he actually needed help with the school, and so I started helping him. And when we were starting to plan sort of the next iteration of the schools, he offered to sell it to me, which was definitely not in my career plan when I left my job, but it's been really rewarding process. I mean, I'm still very new in it, and I'm trying to figure it out, but it's really rewarding. I think, you know, you learn a lot by teaching others, and um, it's great to give back, and it's amazing. It's I don't know. It's a good reminder too about like what you can accomplish. It's because, you know, in this film school, we create films in about a week's time, so it's good to remember that and not overcomplicate storytelling sometimes, which I can bog down into. So yeah, it's been really, really great for me, but definitely an unexpected path.
So for each of you, let's talk about the relationship with your subject, because you're out in the wilderness, you have to be doing things. There's a lot of variables that you can't control, a lot of unexpected things that are going to happen. And you're there to document what they do, but you're kind of also part of the adventure. So how do you juggle that? Anybody can speak up and we'll be on you.
Yeah, I would say that the one thing that I've always like really tried to think about when we're out there is, you know, you can't, I mean, on a lot of levels, like it's an interesting situation. Like sometimes we get thrown in these situations where you're like with people that are world-class athletes, and I'm not. You know, like I love these sports, I love doing them, I like participating in them, but I'm not a world-class athlete. And you know, I can put in my time to be physically fit, et cetera, et cetera. I can put in the time to have knowledge and be solid at everything, but I can't be great like them. And I think that the key is that just in whatever situation you're in is that you match your subject's enthusiasm and effort. And I think that that's a huge thing, so that it's like that you meet, like if somebody's like out there and they're doing something incredible that's pushing them, you need to be doing that creatively too. Is you need to provide that same level of enthusiasm and effort when you're out there that they are, and you're just doing it with the camera, and that's the difference between it. But I think it's, you know, adventure filmmaking. It's an adventure. You know, you go out, you do it, and it's for real. And there's, you know, that's the truth of it. Is you're in the same boat a lot of times as the athlete is.
Yeah, Dana, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, I'll chime in as well. You know, Amy and I do character-driven stories too, and it's always a balance between, are you a fly on the wall and just kind of an observer there, or are you part of it? And I think everyone's personality is different. For me, you know, if somebody's struggling to do something and we're not filming at that moment, you jump in and kind of become part of the team. And everyone knows your role, and they know that you're there with great intentions to capture the most authentic story and to tell the truth in the situation. So it's that balance between standing back with the camera and letting things play out, and also being a part of the team. But I think the most important ingredient as well is just trust, and having the people that you're out there with trust in you and trust in the story that you want to tell. And you know, if you're out hanging off the wall on a rock cliff with someone, which I haven't done, or like off in the desert somewhere, or out in the middle of a field in a national park, you want people to feel comfortable with you and to trust why you're there, and to welcome you being there. So yeah.
So what do you hope that your videos will do to anybody? Clearly, the people who are out there having these experiences are doing it for passion. People who are filming it are doing it for passion. What do you hope will be the result?
We have a very specific goal with the films we're making now for National Park Experience, and that is something needs to change with the demographic of visitors going to the national parks. It doesn't reflect what America actually looks like today, and that's a problem for the parks as they look ahead to their second century and think about how they're going to thrive and stay relevant and you know, be important in people's lives. So, you know, there's so many things on an activist front that could happen after the films, and we hope that many of those things do happen. We hope there are groups who are like, yeah, let's use this film to start the conversation and inspire this group of people who have never considered this landscape before, and then we're going to put them on a bus and get them there because we have this awesome funder who will do that. So, you know, obviously our films can only go so far, but we hope that they be the conversation starter, that inspiration entry point for these groups to come to the parks and realize they're part of the story too.
So after you make the films, because a lot of these, it's a unique space, and I love the fact that you make a film that's only as long as it should be, whether it's 2 minutes or 200 minutes. It's the right length. How do you find is the best way to get these films out to the world to make sure that the work is seen and shared?
For us, it's like, I mean, part of it, part of my interest was in the digital side and the internet, and I'm kind of a geek, and I like the numbers side of it, and I like seeing how people communicate. And so for me, my strategy, a lot of it has been based upon that you make something that is excellent, and you do a really good job, and you hope that it catches on. Because most of what we do and most of our success has just been based upon organic sharing of people passing around these video files and it meaning something to them and striking a chord with them and just sharing it. And, you know, we like, are there ways that we could do better or reach more people? Yeah, I think that they might be more complicated. And for me, it's just like I love the process of it, so I tend not to focus on the complicated things, and I just go back to like telling my stories, and that's kind of where I am. But yeah, I mean, for us, it is a really trick to get people to watch your films, but it's easier than it's ever been for that to happen because there's no gatekeeper. There's no gatekeeper saying who can watch something and who can't, and that was different 10 years ago, and it was different 8 years ago, and it's even just, I mean, it changes every year, and so it's easier and easier for that to actually happen now. So that's how I do it. I just try to put everything I have into it and make it excellent and hope for the best, and it's kind of worked out a lot of times.
How are you all using social media to get the word out there about your work?
I would say that all media, so if you're a filmmaker and you're making online films, all media is inherently social. And so I think that's a really important way to think about it, is that if it's speaking to a portion of the community and you're trying to engage somebody, it's automatically social right to start with. And I mean, social media changes all the time, and there's different techniques and strategies. Like certainly, like, Facebook was a lot more powerful than it was a year ago. It was a lot more powerful than it is now, just because they throttled Facebook. And it's like, it's not such a great resource for us as it was a year ago. So I think that the techniques with the social media change for us almost on a month-to-month basis. But I think it's like always just make the best thing and focus on that, because like the social media will kind of take care of itself. That's my strategy. Other people look at me and think I'm crazy when I say that, but that's my opinion, is just make the best possible thing and worry about the other stuff later.
Yeah, I agree with Fitz. I mean, I think it's, you need to have some sort of plan. You need to use your community, and you need to make partners so that, you can kind of seed it in the right direction. But, if the story doesn't resonate, it's just not going to catch, and people won't share it, And you have to rise above the noise. There's a lot of stuff coming out. So, yeah, you just have to make the best thing you can. And if it doesn't catch, then you move on to the next thing, because there's nothing you can really do to just force it.
I agree. I think I'm glad that you all care first and foremost about the quality, because that will stand the test of time, and that's what matters most. Great stories will be heard, and that's, I guess, at Film Festival Flix, that's our job, is to figure out how to help enhance your reach and power it out beyond the community that you already have. Clearly, social media, Vimeo, all those things, those are all great for reaching the people who already know about you. And that's what we're innovating here with our online film festival and VOD and other programs we do, is how to take those great films and reach the audience that doesn't know about you yet, and will love these films, will be inspired by these films, will be motivated to take action by what they learn, and then to engage with you. And so the whole thing can grow and become simpler and become more effective, so you can focus on just being a great filmmaker and telling great stories that should be heard. Does anybody else have any last words of advice to existing or new filmmakers that you'd love to give them?
Just do it. I mean, just if it speaks to you, just figure it out, and it doesn't have to be perfect the first time. Nothing's ever going to be perfect.
Dana, any last words?
To piggyback off of that, just go out and do it. And the first one, maybe only your family will suffer through, but keep getting feedback and keep finding mentors and apprentice and keep finding inspiration in other stories and other forms of storytelling too, not just film, but in, how's a good novel, how's a good story told in general, and then learn the skills and go for it.
Okay. Amy, last words?
Yeah, I would just say there are a lot of scary moments, whether it's something going way differently than you thought it would on the ground, on the shoot, or a budget issue you're running into in post. And I would just say be brave and stick with it. And if you believe it, and if you can get yourself to that space where you actually believe in yourself, then it's going to happen. It'll work.
NASA, last words?
Yeah, I think that like anything else, storytelling, technical skills, all that are skills that you have to learn and practice. Even creating and concepting something you have to learn and practice. And so just to echo what everyone else has said, practice, practice, practice. I think on the technical side, to experiment and to not worry so much about if it looks great or if it doesn't look great, because through that you're going to learn a lot. And one of the things that I did starting out was I just studied films. Even I'd start learning skills, and then I would study films and force myself to look at films in a very technical way. And so if people want tactical things to do, I would say watch a lot of films, but start watching them with a technical eye, because you can learn a lot from what people put out.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for coming online and testing out some new technologies to see if we could bring this experience that happens at physical film festivals and expand it to the world. That's our goal with this online film festival, is to take all these amazing films you're making and make sure that more people have access to watch them than who can physically come to a festival, or the few selections that make a world tour, which is great, but they all deserve it. So you can see Amy and Dana's film Love in the Tetons in the film festival. Fitz has about 8 or 9 films, from Strong, Silence, Education, The Road from Cahall, also 35, which NASA had created, and just these amazing films. So please come on board. You can see all these great films online at filmfestivalflix.com, Mountain Film, and you can get a pass to watch all of it for $19.99, where we have all these things you can binge watch for the rest of the month and just get inspired to have great adventures and see some great films. So thank you everybody so much for coming on board, and this has been fun.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.